the main problem that's existing today, that is with banks and with other governments and others, is they own too many treasuries that are losing money. These three forces are the biggest in our lifetime. Never magnitudes existed in our lifetime like they do now. You just touched on one. The largest amount of debt offerings and monetization of debt. What is money worth? What is the supply demand? We'll talk about that in a second. The second is the internal political conflict, populism of the left and the right at war with each other, and neither side is going to accept losing. That kind of situation that has implications. They're economic, taxes, all of that, but they go beyond that. And then number three is the great power conflict. In other words, a rise of a great power like China that's comparable to the United States in that conflict. Those three things coming together, each one of them is in greater degrees than has existed in our lifetime.
But you're going to see restraint in a period of time where you're going to see more tensions. There's the Mike Gallagher's commission and so on, more pressure with chips and so on and so forth. I don't think that that's going to cross the line, but it is going to raise tensions. You will see also more attempts, Tony Blinken's going over, you'll see more attempts to try to smooth things out because both sides are afraid of where we are. In any case, while it'll be that kind of brinksmanship, most likely there's a building of self-sufficiency. In other words, efficiency was the game before. Everything was global. You produce it in wherever the cheapest place was, most cost effective, and we became very intertwined with each other. Now in this global world, there's the worry about being cut off in all sorts of things. And so you're having that dynamic play, a negative role in economics and inflation.
The United States share of world trade has declined, and China's share of world trade has increased to become greater. And so if two countries are trading, let's say Saudi Arabia is trading with China, why do they buy? Why do they go to the dollars in order to do that? No good reason to go to the dollars, and they don't know that. Then they're worried about holding the dollars because they might get sanctioned, and so you see more of those transactions taking place in other currencies, and then the usefulness of the dollar as a storehold of wealth changes. It's like, think about it in the most fundamental way.
If you go back in history, major times, and all three of them have come together repeatedly, like in the 1930 to 45 period and other periods like that. So those three factors made me study the last 500 years of history to watch the dynamic of the rise and decline of reserve currencies, debt, but also of empires. Let's look at the mechanics of it a little bit. When the economics of a country are no different than the economics of an individual or a company, in that you can't spend more than you earn. Can't spend more than you earn without getting into debt. And if you have debt, you have to pay back the debt. The only difference is you can print the money.
Now we have moved to a level of real interest rates. Think about inflation. That is, depending on how you calculate, if you look at tips or if you look at short-term interest rates, they need a 1 to 1.5% real rate. Those days that we have seen in the past are over, and there's a big adjustment in that. So the headline for that is, so who have been the losers? Who have been the winners and who have been the losers? This is a different kind of debt problem, in that what happened is, in order to create this big transfer of wealth that there needed to be in various ways, the government borrowed a lot of money, because they spent a lot more than they earned, and they sell a lot of bonds. And then the Federal Reserve buys bonds, and it subsidizes those bonds. And so the big losers of this cycle has not been the individual balance sheets, because the individual balance sheets have been improved. It is the fact that those who are holding government debt are the ones that are having the losses. So the central banks have all lost a lot of money. The commercial banks bought a lot of these debts. So when we look at the commercial banking problem, it is largely a government debt problem, because there was the financing of holding bonds with short-term interest rates, and so that was the squeeze.
So our society is, when you look at this, you see drug problems. You see how the cities are changing. The cleanliness of the cities, the education levels of the cities, mental illness, crimes, and so on. You're not seeing, you're seeing people fighting with each other a lot. Not all the time. There are wonderful places in the United States. Education, some of the best universities, their pockets, some of the their neighborhoods, but there is this encroaching. So you see infrastructure breaking down. School shootings. Okay, so you decide, how we doing?
The question is, what ends that, or is there no end to that? There are two things that end this. First, that the debt service payments to those who are holding the debt, who need it for reward, they want to get paid back plus an interest rate. So you have to have those debt service payments. Those debt service payments increasingly encroach on your spending. In other words, either this thing compounds, and that means that somebody's wanting to buy all that debt, but you have to pay back in one way or another. And when that happens, it encroaches on other spending. So that debt service is one. The other big one is the supply-demand balance issue. In other words, when it happens that people don't want to buy enough debt that needs to be sold, you have the bigger crisis, a debt rollover question. And so let's say, as we're now going to issue another huge amount of debt, and the owners of that debt, there's a lot of owners of that debt who own too much of it. In fact, the main problem that's existing today, that is with banks and with other governments and others, is they own too many treasuries that are losing money.